Tonight, a special edition of World News: Disaster in the Pacific. Earthquake, one of the worst in history. New images from Japan as people scramble to find safety anywhere, any way they can. Then, the tsunami. Roaring as fast as a jumbo jet, crushing everything in sight and traveling the ocean all the way to California, tossing boats against the walls. Add to that the nuclear fear inside a nuclear power plant, with the volcanic heat from the reactor rising. And survivors, people who made it through the worst, to a reunion in the arms of those they love. And now we start our special coverage of disaster in the Pacific.
From ABC News headquarters, this is a special edition of ABC World News with Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. Today, 126 million people watched their world crumbling around them. The earthquake, 8.9, one of the biggest ever. And then 35 minutes later, the tsunami racing at the speed of a jumbo jet. Here's what it looked like on the ground. You can see it as it pulverizes houses. Then it goes on to engulf an airport. You can see that's a jetway barely above water. Those are cars riding the rapids. Apocalyptic scenes broadcast live around the world today. In some cities, the water reaching 3 miles inland. And a nuclear power plant suddenly finding itself without backup pumps to cool the 3,400-degree uranium in the reactor core. We are covering all of this in force tonight, and we asked Dan Harris to start us off at that moment when the world changed 231 miles north of Tokyo and the quake hit.
Fresh pictures from the tsunami zone as the sun rises in Japan, revealing massive plumes of smoke from fires burning out of control, entire neighborhoods simply washed away, and survivors gathered on roofs. In one parking lot, a giant SOS. And this is the moment where the whole disaster starts. 2:46 local time. Debris rains down as people rush out into the street, stunned. Back inside this bookstore, you can see the fear and incomprehension on the faces of the workers. At the same moment, frantic scenes playing out across the country. As the very thing we most rely on, the ground beneath our feet, gives way.
This is the real thing.
School children running for their lives. News anchors wearing helmets on air, and televisions in this office rattling uncontrollably. And then round two as the tsunami sirens wail. A foamy, furious wave comes roaring in at 500 miles an hour, with others lined up right behind it. The walls of water crash ashore with astonishing power, marauding across the flat Japanese countryside, swallowing everything in the way.
And it looks like the tsunami has been engulfing the port. You're seeing live footage of a tsunami engulfing the port area of Kamai City in Iwate Prefecture. This is what's happening right as we speak.
It builds into a toxic, treacherous soup of cars, boats, and houses, some of them on fire. Watch as this irresistible liquid invasion creates waterfalls of cars, rips this home right off of its foundation, and destroys an entire village. To get a sense of the scale of this thing, check out this lone man on the back of a truck, seemingly so small against the onslaught just yards away. Or look at this boat stuck on the cusp of a massive whirlpool, or this ship struggling to stay upright as the waves crash all around it. As of right now, the official toll of dead and missing stands at 1,000. It will likely go up, however. A ferry carrying 100 people is still missing, as is an entire passenger train carrying an unknown number of people. Dan Harris, ABC News.
And with those riveting images in mind, we want to bring you a few of people describing exactly what it felt like at that moment.
We are experiencing earthquake. Everything is falling. They tell me that I'm supposed to be under a desk or something. Oh. All right, I'm gonna go under the desk. Oh. Oh my God, what the? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have just seen firsthand of earthquake.
This real sense of kind of nausea and seasickness almost, with the whole earth shaking underneath you. The whole building was squeaking and sounded like a boat. I did think at one point that I really might die here.
I thought this was it. That this one was so strong that it scared the heck out of you.
The nausea, seasickness, and to give you a sense of what it was when then that wall, that giant inexorable tsunami descended, the lethal mud and water and steel, the biggest wave was a monstrous 23 feet high. And you can see it there next to a human being, how enormous it was. It took about 7 hours and 30 minutes to travel from Japan to Hawaii, and you're seeing the pictures there of what happened when it hit the shores in Hawaii. And then in another 2 hours and 10 minutes, it had rocketed across Hawaii to the west coast, 2,400 miles, and people were tweeting, emailing every step of the way as this happened, and our own Elizabeth Vargas was watching it all on the tweet board up there.
Absolutely. That massive earthquake and wave of water wiped out power and phone service to millions. As a result, many turned to the internet. At the height of the earthquake, 1,200 tweets a minute were coming out of Tokyo. We've been following them all day, and now as day breaks, the number of tweets is growing again. One tweet just in reads, "Morning broke and the scene is awful. Everything in pieces. Earthquake warnings keep coming and I can't keep calm." And there is this desperate message: "Swept away by the tsunami in my car and now am inside the Ryukawa Giko Company warehouse on top of a truck. Please help." Experts say it is the tsunami that followed the quake that will cause most of the devastation.
A horrifying picture of a nation at the mercy of Mother Nature. The wave struck hardest in the north of Japan, mostly farm communities. A dark, debris-filled sea of water and mud enveloping everything in its path, the flat landscape offering little resistance to the surge of water as it charged deep inland. In all, the waves pummeled a 1,300-mile stretch of Japanese coastline. Ships caught in this massive whirlpool crashing on land. Waves breaking over embankments, sweeping up a factory lot full of brand new cars in its wake. Sendai Airport swallowed up whole, so many fleeing to rooftops to escape the mountain of debris barreling by. And this family waving white towels in desperate need of rescue. It all started early this morning, 15 miles below the ocean's surface. The Earth's plates shifted, one lunging up over the other, immediately shocking the Earth, creating the catastrophic earthquake. But when those plates shifted, they also pushed the ocean's water, sending it on a 43-mile journey straight into the shore. And the terrifying science is that tsunamis first appear to be only small waves. The devastation hides beneath the water. We can't see them until they barrel into the shallow water of a shoreline, which catapults the tsunami onto land. Alarms did sound. In fact, Japan has the world-renowned early warning system that sends alerts to television, radio, and cell phones. But those minutes of warning weren't nearly enough.
The State Department has set up hotlines and email addresses for families looking for Americans in Japan, and Google has set up a website called the Google People Finder. There are more than 15,000 entries, and the site is growing rapidly. And Diane, people are obviously taking to Twitter and Facebook as well to search for loved ones.
That's right. Reunions. We hope to see those reunions coming soon. Thank you, Elizabeth. And of course, another concern all day long, focus of growing fear, the 40-year-old nuclear plant damaged by the earthquake, its power knocked out. A crucial cooling system disabled with pressure building inside the reactor. Japan declared a state of emergency at the plant, its first ever, and Chris Cuomo is here with that. Chris.
We're getting updates right now, Diane, as we're broadcasting. The situation's still far from under control. We're hearing radiation levels inside the plant reached as high as 1,000 times the normal level. So what started as a natural disaster has the potential to become an even more threatening man-made disaster.
The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant is one of the largest and oldest nuclear power plants in the world, and now it is in great jeopardy.
The immediate crisis period is right now extending over the next 5 to 6 hours, but it takes at least 2 days to cool a reactor down completely.
Nuclear plants use the energy from highly radioactive uranium to make electricity. Uranium normally operates at 3,400 degrees. To keep it from getting any hotter, pumps circulate water to cool the uranium core. The problem is, the earthquake and the tsunami combined as a 1-2 punch. Experts believe knocking out the primary and backup water pumps. If there's no water, there's no cooling. Pressure builds, which could trigger a release of radioactive steam into the environment. If the water level drops enough, the uranium core is exposed, and temperatures can rise quickly to 5,000 degrees, causing a meltdown.
They're not being designed to withstand the worst case accidents. They're only being built to withstand the most likely. If you do that, eventually you're going to hit a worst case. And that's what happened today.
Please stand by with your doors and windows closed.
The only nuclear accident in U.S. history happened in 1979 at 3 Mile Island. A 1-2 punch was again to blame. A broken valve released some radioactive steam, and workers at the plant failed to shut down quickly enough. The core melted down, the most dangerous kind of nuclear accident. Thankfully, tragedy was avoided because the containment walls remained intact.
No significant amount of radioactivity was released from the 3 Mile Island plant. The impact on the local population was essentially zero.
And that was the best case scenario. We do know that right now people are on scene at the plant. They have backup power, Diane, but they haven't reconnected it yet. And now we're hearing they may release some radioactive steam to reduce the pressure there. They say they're going to filter out the radiation, but experts say that's very difficult to do.
And of course, it depends which way the wind is blowing,
yes,
where it hits. But Chris was saying this is still a serious situation. And all day long, physicist Michio Kaku has been following the situation with us. So, Dr. Kaku, at this hour, what do you think of how long it is taking to get those generators back up?
This is unusual, the first time in history. And remember, the Japanese reactors are the safest in the world, but they were never designed to handle an 8.9 earthquake. 7.0, 7.5, but not 8.9.
And you were showing me the reactor water, the cooling water, is supposed to be about this high above the core, giving it some perspective here. And what happens when it backs up? How quickly does it burn off?
Well, when the water levels begin to drop and expose the red hot core of uranium, it hits 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Within 30 minutes, you can start to get a core meltdown. Now, what's preventing that is the emergency core cooling system, the backup system. But the backup systems are failing. Power went out in the backup system. This is what normally happens. In a nuclear accident, immediately, the generators kick in, pour cooling water over the damaged core. Right now, we're desperately trying to put generators on site. 14 generators have now arrived. They're testing them, they're inserting them, but it's a race against time, because if a secondary earthquake hits, the accident could go to a whole new level.
And you were telling me earlier that it's not just one bottle of water they need. They have to keep coming because it burns off and evaporates. And I know you'll be standing by with us throughout the rest of the evening. Thank you, Dr. Kaku. It is Saturday morning now in Tokyo, a city of almost 13 million people. And even though they weren't at the epicenter, the city is at the standstill, crisscross gridlock of stalled buses, stopped trains, idle taxis. And ABC's Akiko Fujita was in Tokyo when the quake hit. She's trying to make her way north to the hardest hit areas. Akiko, we saw earlier today a complete paralysis in the city of Tokyo. We're talking 13 million people, 30 million if you're talking greater Tokyo. Give me a sense of the subways and earlier what it was on the road.
Well, Diane, this is a city that is just in gridlock. I'm going to step out of the way so you can see the traffic still out on the road. These are all cars that are headed east to the coast. And keep in mind, it's still very early on a Saturday morning. Train lines still shut down there. We saw people who, some people who had to sleep outside. Many of these people who work here actually commute in from outside. And so last night when those train lines shut down, people were just stranded. We saw an incredible scene actually at a bank when we looked in around at 2 in the morning. There were people sleeping inside. Banks had opened up their doors to people who were stranded in Tokyo, had nowhere else to go.
What's the most memorable thing you've seen around town? What have you seen in the faces of people?
There was definitely a sense of a state of shock yesterday, but keep in mind this is a country that is used to earthquakes. We get earthquakes out here a lot. Japanese like to believe they are very prepared for them.
And we're hearing more than 100 aftershocks, big ones.
We have definitely felt it, and it's really to the point where we feel the swaying, and it was very strong at the beginning. They've gotten weaker, but there's this constant sort of dizzy feeling as we stand here in Tokyo, really just several hours south of the epicenter. We still continue to feel the aftershock.
As we said, it didn't take much time for that tsunami to make its way across the ocean and hit the west coast of the United States. I want to bring in Bill Weir now. He is standing by. He was there when it hit this afternoon earlier. Bill?
That's right, Diana. People are back enjoying the Pacific tonight after spending the morning staring at it with sort of a uncertain dread. Nothing like a 6-hour tsunami warning to make you take stock of how ready you are or aren't. The quake-driven water sloshed across Maui and headed for the mainland at 500 miles an hour. It drove an 8-foot wave into the piers of Crescent City, California, toppled boats in Santa Cruz, and swept 5 wave watchers out to sea. 1 is still missing. Since experts say it's only a matter of time before America's big one, many are taking stock tonight and realizing their disaster plan is a disaster.
We've got water.
Well, this is enough for 2 people for 1 day.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. Donnell James is the epitome of laid-back West Coast preparedness and a stark contrast to the regimented Japanese who never forgot the 1923 quake that killed 100,000. Every September, they mark the anniversary with a nationwide disaster drill. There are family outings to earthquake simulators, buildings with gyroscopes so towers will sway but never fall. And while Americans depended on a patchwork of old air raid sirens and 4 a.m. robocalls,
this is an urgent Alert OC message from the city of Newport Beach.
Japan has the world's only earthquake early warning system. The moment it feels the earth shift, warnings are sent to media and cell phones instantly, while power and gas plants shut off automatically.
They're state-of-the-art with respect to the resources and tools, the technological, the scientific tools that are necessary to thwart earthquakes and to mitigate damage.
And consider Japan's state-of-the-art undersea sensors and tsunami gates protecting key ports. While just last month, our House of Representatives voted to slash funding for the Hawaiian Tsunami Warning Center that issued last night's alarm. One more reason to look out for yourself.
If something happened like in Tokyo where 4 million homes are without power and water for weeks at a time, what are you going to do?
Probably pray a lot, meditate.
Of course, there are well-prepared Californians. They may save their lives one day, but you look at those pictures in Japan, Diane, even the best of the world prove that you can't stop Mother Nature's fury. You can really only hope to contain the damage.
And now some of the other news right here at home. Floodwaters in this country are still rising from Maryland to Maine, with the second drenching storm this week, sending rivers over their banks, filling basements, forcing thousands of families in low-lying areas to higher ground. And more milestones as Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords continues her recovery. Doctors say her breathing tube is out. She is now speaking in complete sentences, and her walking is improving all the time. Leaps and bounds, they say. Her husband, Mark Kelly, has now told her that she was shot, but she does not remember what happened in Tucson. And 30 years after President Ronald Reagan was shot, Secret Service audio of the assassination attempt has just been released. It captures the first chaotic moments after John Hinckley opened fire, March 1981.
Shots fired. Shots fired. Roger, we want to go to the emergency room, George Washington.
And as we know, the speed, the seconds, saved his life. It has been a terrifying day for so many millions of people, and you can count on ABC News to follow the earthquake and tsunami moment by moment at abcnews.com. And this evening, there'll be a special edition of 2020. Earlier today, the president reminded all of us that events like these simply reinforce our certainty that we share one planet bound by our vulnerabilities. So we leave you tonight with some snapshots of people so much like all of us here at home.